Greetings, Mark Garang here, publisher of The Sun. And today is March 4th, which happens to be the morning before the school deliberative session. And today my guest is Mike DiGregorio, who's the chairman of the Conway School Board.
I am.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well.
All right.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Now, this stuff, I have to admit, is very complicated. So I'm going to go over the basic numbers and see if this makes sense to you.
We'll see.
Okay?
I may need some backup support, so we'll see.
All right, so the operating budget, as you guys, and I'm going to say the school board proposed, is $40 million, I'm going to just use round numbers, $40 million.
Yeah.
All right, and that's actually a little bit lower than last year's.
1.75% less.
But the nuance is that includes a $1.9 million deduction because we paid off our bond for the school.
Yep.
So the school budget itself is actually up.
Spending's up.
The spending's
in the
up.
sense of the categories of spending, so to speak. So
Yes.
the budget's down 1.7 or 700,000, but as you just pointed out, the default is a huge portion of that because we're not paying that bill anymore.
Right.
I think the special services budget is down 7% overall. I don't know if you caught that in the paperwork. And then there was some positions that we put in place that we used staff from other areas that weren't necessarily needed over there. So we put those people in place. For example, the alt education at the high school, because we're trying to really go after, one of the big things that I heard when I first got on the board was discipline. So we're really trying to go after that group, you know, of students that need some extra support and guidance.
So how did, I want to go back to the budget because this is what it's going to be, we're going to post this so people will see it before the deliberative. But speaking of that discipline issue, how did the Eagles Academy get disbanded? Because that's where a lot of the kids were, the kids who didn't fit in, let's put it that way, in Eagle Academy, which was not during school hours. And then Eagle Academy was changed, so that was in school hours. Those kids, and it was those kids that caused most of the discipline problems. Isn't that true?
So to answer the question about how did it go away, I don't know, because I didn't even know it was gone until I got back on the school board. As you remember, I filled in a position a year or so ago. As I was getting in there and hearing about all this discipline stuff going on, I started asking questions about Eagle Academy, and everybody went, it's gone. And I asked other board members, and I'm not sure everybody even knew it was gone, so I won't speak for others, but that was a shock to me. And that's, you know, when I decided to run for the board last year, I had expressed to administration that was going to be one of my number one priorities was dealing with the alt ed, Eagle Academy, you know, however you want to word it.
Who made that decision then? Is that a superintendent or a principal decision?
I
mean,
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how it went away. I never got to the bottom of that. I simply wanted to reinvigorate that program.
So where is it? But is it not true? And this is just what I've heard, is that it's, you know, that group of kids is what really caused a lot of the discipline problems during the regular school day.
So it certainly can. So let's back up 20 years in the sense that, you know, the state of New Hampshire 20 years ago, 17 years ago, made the decision to force kids to stay in school till they're 18. If you remember, it used to be 16 years old.
Absolutely.
And in my mind, you know, there are many reasons why kids drop out of school at 16 years old. We certainly want them all to stay. We want them to get a degree and all that. But the reality is some of them just go to work. Some of them, school's just not for them, and they go out and some of them get real good jobs, you know. I mean, I'm a hands-on person. If it wasn't for the vocational technical building when I was in high school, I would have been a dropout because I like doing stuff with my hands. But I stayed in school because I got to enjoy those programs. So 20 years ago, kids were dropping out when they were 16. When the state decided to keep them all till they're 18, what they did is they added 40 kids into the program that don't want to be there.
Right.
Not
happy. And they're not happy.
You know, and so it's up to us to figure out how to deal with that. And it's basically an alternative program. It's, you know.
So where is it now?
Well, it's up and running now. I think there's, I want to say there's like 8, maybe this semester was supposed to go to 8 to 15 kids were supposed to be in that program. It's really geared, it's a high school diploma through the state. It's because we require, I think, 25 credits. The state is 20 credits. And Kevin Carpenter can explain it better than I, as far as there's some other stuff in there that may help a student out better than the 20 credit program. But it's really designed for those students that just need a little guidance.
Sure.
You know, it's more one-on-one. The gentleman that we hired to oversee the program, I think, is going to do a great job. And
Is it in the school? Where is it?
it's in the school. If you remember, originally we were going to take that program and get it off-site,
Right.
because we think there's more success when that program's off-site. Because of real estate right now, we couldn't find anything for less than $50,000 a year in a
You
lease.
couldn't use some of the space in the middle school?
Nobody really thought that space over there was designed. We did look at that. As you know, the rec department is leasing
Yeah.
out a fair amount of that building.
How much space do you need for
I
10
think
kids?
I think they wanted like 6,000 square feet or something like that, maybe 10.
That's for,
you know.
for 10 kids?
I think the overall, the program would probably be as high as 20 to 25. But right now, the first group going in is going to be in that 8 to 15 area.
Okay, so we won't get into the weeds of why you need 5,000 square feet for 20 kids. That's the size of a retail store.
I'm just telling you.
Okay, okay.
You know, I'm just
so,
telling
okay,
you.
so where do you think the discipline? So
now
it's where?
it's in the high school. So we made some changes within the building itself to isolate those areas a little bit.
Yep.
It's over in the career tech area right now, and from everything I'm hearing, it's doing well. I try to talk to a lot of students.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get in the buildings a lot.
Yeah.
Not as much as I'd like, because I have a full-time job, more than a full-time job.
Yeah. That's school board.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my real job
yeah,
is I work for
yeah.
the phone company,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So I'm in there 60 hours a
Yeah,
week,
yeah.
and then I'm, doing school board stuff whenever
Yeah.
I can. But I do try to talk to a lot of students, and I point blank ask them, how's things going? How do you see in discipline? How are you seeing the overall feeling? And every kid I've talked to so far this year it's really been positive.
Okay, good.
So
let's get back into
that's a huge thing.
Let's get back to the important, but the totally less interesting stuff
Right.
to
That's
talk.
the
to.
budget stuff,
The
right?
budget stuff, right? So the budget, we know the budget's down a little bit, but it's basically down because we retired a $1.9 million
Correct.
thing. Then
Do you want to know where the increase comes from? So while we're on that, so
you said so. Oh, well, go ahead.
yeah, so as you know, last year there was
Contracts. Yeah.
and health insurance.
Right.
Those two numbers alone are $1.2 million added into spending. Just those two categories. So the budget's down.
Right.
Those two categories added back 1.2, which is why you get the difference of that 700,000.
Okay.
Okay.
Then you've got that's just the operating budget. Then you have all the special articles, which the town and school, they always have.
Yep.
So you've got like $2 million, $2.3 million, one for the maintenance.
Yep.
And then you've got a bunch of others. But when you add it all up, you have the $40 million operating budget, you add up all the specials, you get to $43,150,000 about. So that's an overall increase of 5.7%.
Yep.
Okay, so back to the maintenance thing, and the default budget, which you alluded to earlier, is $1 million less than the
1.4.
is 1.4 million less.
Correct.
Right. So now, whatever happens at the deliberative, for the first time that I can remember, the default budget is going to be significantly lower
Correct.
than the school board budget.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So people are going to have a real choice.
They will have a real choice this year.
Right.
So let's get into the maintenance
Yeah.
thing. That's Article 9, $2.3 million. We believe we're going to reduce that tonight by an additional $500,000.
And why is that?
So the vast majority of the $2 million, and this has been some information that was incorrectly put out into the public, the vast majority of that number is for roof maintenance at the high school. As you know, the Gale Associates gave us a report, $40 million in roof repairs. I think we talked about it the last interview you and I did. 10, 12 million of that is at the high school, okay? So, and when the estimates come in, or when the analysis was done, that has to include getting everything up to code. So because the high school is obviously newer, the code was already there. So after the initial thought process or investigation, Then we did some sampling to make sure that what we thought was accurate. And it looks like the code, so to speak, is there. So now we're just replacing the roof rather than bringing it up to code and
got it.
replacing a roof.
Okay.
So that's why we believe that section of the roof that we're talking about, which is the worst at the high school right now, we have some significant leaks there. And that section is where we think we're going to be able to do it for 1.5 rather than 2 million. And then the rest of the money, the $300,000, was earmarked for some work at the middle school and some windows at the elementary schools. Now, as this conversation evolves into what we're doing with our overall buildings, hopefully we get an answer to that before we actually start spending some money at the middle school and the high school, or the elementary schools that we don't need. I'll get into that a little bit more with you if you want.
Okay. So, and you've always been a big advocate, I know you have been, about maintenance.
Absolutely.
And so.
Don't buy it unless you're going to take care of it.
Okay, so, but the high school was only built in, what, 2008?
Went on 2007. I think
8.
it went online.
Okay, so
yeah.
that's only 15 years.
Yeah.
And how is it, I mean, was there any recourse to the builder or the contractors or the person who, or the consulting agency? I mean, we had to place, what, $1 million worth of windows already? And now we have to do, after 15 years, you have to replace a roof? Is that typical? I wouldn't think so. You know, I wouldn't hire that contractor for fix my house.
I haven't been there for 15 years, so listen, when I heard about it, I was as shocked as you were, put it that way. You know, I have to go forward with what I have.
Sure. They don't, but there's no performance guarantees when.
You know, I mean, roofs are all prorated anyways, right? So you get, you know, you have someone for your own house,
right,
and you keep, 15, 30-year warranty on it.
Yeah.
You know, and by the end of that warranty,
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, I'll buy you a cup of coffee.
No, it's true.
You know.
But the windows.
And the windows were a disaster from day one. Andy DiGregorio and I fought against those windows tooth and nail.
I mean, because you knew they were cheap.
They were cheap. They were put in, not wrong, but we didn't like them at all. Andy and I, I don't want to speak for Andy, but I'll speak for myself. Didn't like the windows, and I was correct. They were junk, and they should not have been put in.
Okay, we want to go into how that even happened. You think in hindsight we should have built the high school?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
I mean, what about the idea that now that we have the declining enrollment, that I've talked to people in the administration, and I'm not saying it was like, Kevin or anybody, but who think, no, that was just a mistake from day one to build that school.
Well, I think it was for many reasons. If
Wait a minute, you think what was a mistake?
I think it was a good idea for many reasons. First of all, for anybody that lives in the village like I do, traffic, when the high school used to be in the village, the traffic was a disaster in the morning. We all knew that, right? If you ask me if let's just say the old high school, where the middle school is today, if that was never in the village like that, somewhere else, would I have said build something new? I don't know. But I personally like the idea of getting all of that students and stuff out of the village for multiple reasons. One, for the traffic issue, for security issues. To be able to get onto that property, anybody can get on that property in a moment's notice, and there's not much you're going to do about it.
Yeah.
As opposed to an isolated building like we have today. So, do we need to do more security stuff? Absolutely. But I like the fact that to migrate that off the building. And to be honest with you, I've started this conversation about building an entirely new school, K through 8. So the middle school is really an albatross when it comes to maintenance, right? It's the worst building we have.
It's a hodgepodge. One thing is a hodgepodge. It's got like 3 different additions to it.
I'm an alumni. I love that building. I walk around that building and I have great memories of being there. But as a school board chair, I have to think of realistically, and should we be educating in that building any longer? And for me, from what I'm seeing, the answer is no. I think we could save a ton of money in maintenance, capital improvement, capital costs, staffing. If everybody's from K through 8 under one building, you're talking basically now 2 administrations, principals and the staff support rather than 5. Long term, I think that's a huge savings from an academic standpoint. Talking to administration and special service people and all that stuff, there's no question that having everybody under one building would help education.
Now,
So,
where would that be?
right next to your house. I don't,
Now, is there enough room up by the high school?
no, because they sold that land up there.
All right, because that would be a kind of a logical thing. You could put-
Absolutely.
yeah.
I said that, I said that 20 years ago, we should buy that land right next door. And it didn't go anywhere.
You mean the
then.
next door land is the continuum land?
What is now the continuum land,
Right.
I wanted to buy that years and years ago.
All right.
You know.
And then the other logical spot, I suppose, would be Conway L. David Hayne, the realtor, has a letter in, I don't think it's published yet, and his dad was like the soil conservation person back in the 60s or 70s when the Conway L was built. And David was saying that he said even back then they knew it was in a 100-year floodplain.
Yeah.
So one would
Can't do it there.
Can't do it there because now it's a 10-year floodplain.
Yeah, well, if you know, in the last storm,
Yeah.
the water was literally inches from getting into the doors at the elementary school.
Right.
It was in the parking lot. It hadn't made it into this threshold to get in the door, but it was actually in the parking lot in the last storm. And, you know, things are changing. The river's changing.
Yeah, well,
You
and
know.
the climate's changing.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't think it's climate change, I don't think, but
No, I just think the river's changing.
Yeah.
As silt and stuff comes off the mountains,
yeah.
you know, that slows down how the water travels, and it has to back up somewhere.
Yeah, I was just trying to
You know.
bait you with the climate change
I
thing
know,
because
you
I
are.
know you're conservative.
That doesn't mean we don't believe in climate, man.
Well, good. Well, there's weather and climate.
Yeah.
All right, so so the budget. So what happens? Let's talk about the school closing for a second.
Sure.
The school boards. You've decided to. You made a decision to close the school.
Correct.
And now you're asking the administration to choose one.
Correct.
And what happens if after April you get a new board and the board reverses itself? Is that possible, or is a decision made, or how does that work?
Great question, because voting matters, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we know that from local boards all the way up to the presidential
Yeah,
race,
yeah.
right? Voting matters.
Yeah.
I was hoping to get to an answer and get it into this year's budget. Obviously, there was some serious delays early on that didn't get us to the answer that we wanted to for budget season. So now it's kind of going into next year. But I think now things have changed in the sense of, for the first time ever, administration has publicly said that this is the right thing to do. That they believe it's moving forward. They're doing an excellent job behind the scenes trying to figure out how logistically it's all going to work. They've got, I don't know if they're announcing at their next board meeting, but they're going to start holding forums. Hopefully the people sitting at home will attend those forums
For what?
to get questions, you know, I think the first forums are probably for the PTA people and some staff and stuff like that. But eventually we'll get forums right out into the public so we can actually listen to their questions and give them some answers. But I believe that is moving forward. You know, the decision's made. At some point, a school will be chosen. I don't know what that building's going to be yet. And I think it would be hard pressed, to be honest with you, for a new board to come in and just overvote that entire thing. That's my gut feeling.
Yeah.
We really only have one open race because Sean Baldwin, who was on the IRAC committee, is all by himself on the one-year slot.
Right.
Right. So the only open race is the 2 3-year
And
slots.
there are 3 people on that?
There's Alex Loth, who has a great background with project management. Works for a big real estate development company or builder or something like that. He could be extremely valuable, not only through the maintenance discussions
Okay.
that we just had, but if we decide to go down the path of a new building altogether, you know, I don't really know Alex very
Right.
well,
Yep.
but he could be very valuable with his background. On a side note, one of the problems that I had 20 years ago when I was on the school board, no disrespect for anybody, but I was the only one that had any construction background that was on the board at the time. And then, you know, Andy and I fought all the time with stuff that we saw on the new
Yeah,
high
yeah,
school that
yeah.
were wrong, right?
Right.
And having someone like this Alex guy involved, if he gets on
Right.
there, could be very
Now, isn't it
valuable.
obvious?
I'm not endorsing anybody.
No,
I'm
I
just
appreciate
saying,
that. There's some good people,
there's
and
some-
I couldn't even tell you who's on.
Well, there's Alex Loth, Jason Frazier, I think.
Oh
his
yeah,
name
Jason
is.
Frazier. His wife is Holly.
Yeah, Randy Davidson, and
Yeah.
I think Michaela Clement.
And
we
there are
signed
2
up.
seats for that?
2 seats,
Yeah,
yep.
so, all right. And but it just seems, actually Kevin, Kevin Richard, he agreed to an interview as much as it's portrayed that
I think he's going to come in with me another time.
Here?
Yep.
Oh, we did a one-on-one.
I know.
And he said, I asked him directly, I said, what school? And he says, Pine Tree. I mean, it just seems obvious, just telling you from an outsider. One is Pine Tree's, no sewer, no blah, blah, blah. But John Fuller, and this kind of dovetails into your idea of building a new school, the fact that the school still owns that SAU 9 property out on
Yep.
Pine Tree,
Yep.
Pine Street, right up to the Route 16,
Yep.
that's a lot of space there.
11 acres,
11 acres. So you could build a brand new school there in 20 years
not for a middle school. It's not enough.
for a middle school, no, I mean for a elementary school,
Oh, yeah.
like a big one.
Big elementary school?
Yeah.
You mean for everybody?
Yeah.
I don't think it's enough because I don't know.
11 acres?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, you get fields, you get Whitaker Woods, but it's a
Yeah.
nice piece of property. And I don't think, are you an advocate? One thing, as much as I'm I'm always railing against the budget is too high and all that over the years, I don't think the school or the town should sell that property. That is primo, that North Colony property with John Fuller and the SAU 9 property, that's primo property,
So, yeah, that's,
right?
yeah.
I mean, you could sell it to Burger King.
Let's open up that can of worms,
No, you
okay?
could sell it to Burger King and make, no.
So-
But you could put a welcome center there, you could use it for municipal building, school building, it's just,
Right.
we should keep it.
So my job as the school board chair is to figure out the best avenue for the school system, not for the town, tourist system or anything like that, right?
Right.
So that property, 11 acres of land based on our zoning, could get 94 housing units in there, okay? Just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah,
Just talking about value right now.
right.
That's got a value, that puts a value of that land at $6-7 million,
Yeah.
right? And then somebody could come in and build 90-something units to go in there and still make a ton of money. Pine Tree is in a residential neighborhood, right? There's not a lot you can do with that. It doesn't have all the things that you just mentioned, which is 3-phase power, water, sewer, much parking. The expanded parking would end up going on the stump dump. That's, that little ball field that's off to the side there,
Yeah.
that's the old stump dump, right?
Mm.
So I'm not even sure you could build a parking lot out there unless it was dirt because
Yeah, moves.
asphalt would
Right.
just crumble. So, however, it's the newer school, it has the least amount of maintenance going on, the roofs don't need much for the next few years. So there's an argument both sides.
What are you thinking?
Well, I think the bigger picture is all the buildings, and that's why I've been advocating. I want to just start the conversation, should we go down the road and have an honest, open debate of whether we should build an entirely new building? And I know this is going to scare a lot of alumni, but to close down the middle school and all the 3 elementary schools,
In one big building for all that,
K through 8,
okay, through it.
okay,
Yeah.
and probably even preschool through 8.
Yeah.
And obviously design it to, keep whatever you need to keep separated from one grade level to the other.
Well, the middle school would be a nice apartment building.
So,
They renovated the elementary school in Berlin, the old Brown school that I went to. That's apartments.
as a resident of Conway Village, I would love to see someone that has some deep pockets that would turn that into some housing units, some retail units, maybe even a restaurant somewhere in that building. I'd love to see the town move into the main section of the 1923 building. I don't, these are all Mike's ideas, just so everybody's sitting at home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-oh, crazy Mike.
Crazy Mike. I come up with these ideas and then nobody listens to me for 20 years and they're
Right.
like, oh, well, maybe we should have.
Yeah.
I've been talking about the fire department closing for 20 years, so finally,
Well,
finally
everybody else. Though.
finally they're listening.
Yeah.
So that puts a tremendous amount of tax revenue into the Conway Village. We have over $50 million worth of buildings in the village that are nonprofits that
Wow.
don't pay any taxes in the village,
Yeah.
right? So that idea that I just threw out there would put some decent tax revenue. There's certainly something they could do with Conway L. If someone is to buy
Yeah,
that
yeah.
and turn that into something.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to cut you off because we
Okay.
have 4 minutes to go.
No, we could talk for
No, I know you
hours.
could talk for hours,
could
but
talk
we
for
can't because we
hours.
have to fit this in. We want Valley Vision to pick this up.
There's a part 1, part 2.
Yeah, well, we could do many parts. We'll come back after the deliberative. So predictions tonight. I mean, the reval, you know, usually what happens is deliberative, and this has happened the last couple of years. The budget committee comes in. I think last year they wanted an $800,000 cut.
1.2 million.
1.2, maybe the year before was 800,000, and then you get the group of people who are pro-school, and they restore that. And so basically, the budget committee, to me, was a waste of time for the last 2 years because none of the cuts they wanted happened. Now you have the reval, which is adding to everybody's property taxes this year. What do you think is going to happen tonight?
I think the number will probably stay the same. I think it'll end up going before the voters with the budget that's presented right now.
The $40 million budget.
$40 million.
Yeah. Now, the budget committee didn't even offer cuts, right?
Correct.
So what's going on? Is there like a secret meeting between the budget committee and the school board that neither of you recommend the budget?
Do you want to know what my strategy for them, I think, is?
Who? Oh, for the budget committee. Yeah, your buddies.
I believe that, I'm not speaking for any of them, this is just, you know, what I thought about the next day after that took place. By not changing the numbers, there's no emergency. So they would expect nobody. You've been to deliberative meetings where nobody shows up.
Right.
There's been people in the audience, you know, one person.
Yeah.
I remember one year in particular, one person showed up,
Yeah.
right? So there's no emergency, there's nothing big going on, no controversy. So, you know, nobody shows up, it's not hard to change that number, right? So
Boy.
We'll see.
Is this the Bill Marvel, Peter Donahoe conspiracy theory?
I don't know. You know, I do know that people are planning on showing tonight just to, you know, make sure the numbers don't change too much. But, you know, again, you know, I would have been comfortable with a change in number because I wanted to take about $400,000 or $500,000 and put it into new resources. We have to do something at the middle school for after school Project Succeed type stuff. We got to figure out, there's probably 40 kids over there. We got to figure out how to captivate them after school, before project, the rec center stuff. We need to get a second math coach in the district. I want to attack K through 3. I believe that's where you can solve so many more problems down the road.
Sure.
And, you know, even if we do close down a school and there is a substantial savings there, it's not going to be, we're going to turn it back all back over. That's my feeling right now, is we have to go after the report card. We got some really good growth numbers in that report card. I don't know how much you paid attention to how that report card works, but there's some really good growth information in there, and it's a little hard for me to explain. Amy Frechette and Danielle Nutting did a phenomenal job explaining that recently at some SAU 9 meetings. That's this kind of stuff that I want to attack.
Yep.
Is, you know, I was on Zillow recently looking at a piece of property, and I just happened to go into Conway and listen, you know, we got some horrible numbers in there. You know, when you look at the school system numbers in Zillow.
What do you mean?
Well,
how does Zillow have bad
because
school
they
numbers?
rate towns.
Oh, you mean it says a poor education?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know,
that's what scores will do.
Right. So we're actually reaching out to Zillow right now to figure out where they get those numbers from, and trying to we got to fix those.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
So we go ahead. We got a minute to go.
The biggest thing for me right now is we have to fix those numbers. We can't fix those numbers by keep cutting, but I don't want to just throw money and not get results either. To me, I have said very clearly to administration, I'm going to give you the support you need, and then I'm going to hold you accountable for what you do. That's how I look at it.
No, and that's a fair approach, and you're always a pretty fair guy, even if you are a little bit of a crazy conservative, you know. No, but the alternate theory about the budget committee, and I don't know this, and you know, and I'm buddies with Bill Marvel because he's a columnist, but
I like Bill
because
Marvel.
and we all like Bill. Well, not all of us, but you know, because the default is $1 million lower.
1.4.
1.4. There's going to be a real change. The voters in April are going to have a real change. So maybe they're just saying, hey, 1.4 is good enough.
Right.
Instead of pulling a October surprise.
You know what's interesting?
Tonight.
If I got enough time, I want to answer this, okay? So one of the arguments that the budget committee keeps making is that we returned $3.4 million this past August or so from last year's budget, right? You've heard me say this, I don't know, on the tapes or whatever, but
you could have spent it.
I could have spent it, right? Not that I would, but I could have. But those dollars that we returned in this past cycle, the first time we had a discussion about those dollars was October of 2021. That's how these budgets work. Unlike the town, who works from January to April, basically free, right? They're already spending in this current year's budget, even though it hasn't been approved. That's not how the school works.
You're 18 months ahead.
We're 18 months from the time of approval from the budget committee till the time we totally expend it. But we're even more than that because we start that conversation with the school board in October. Administration actually starts in September. So we're almost 2 years difference, right? I don't know anybody that can budget out 2 years, right? And be as accurate as we are. So the reason that we had $3.4 million, it had nothing to do with me. It was because there was, from some time ago, it was because we went after grant funding. We $1.5 million additional revenue that was unexpected. We didn't hire the staff that we thought we were going to.
Well, you tried to.
We tried to,
right?
right?
I mean, it was just tough to hire
We tried
people.
to. We literally had teachers doing janitorial work,
Right.
students after school doing janitorial work. We were 10 staff members down just in that department alone, right? So all of these things put together make up that additional $3.4 million that was returned. The budget committee comes out and has publicly said that if we were able to return that $3.4 million, we must not need this number going forward, even though that number was from 2021 and we're talking about $2,025. They just don't get that. And that's really frustrating when you have that conversation. The other thing they made a suggestion to, one of them in particular, was if I really needed to replace these roofs, why wouldn't I just take the $3.4 million and do it with that? That just shows what a lack of understanding how the budget system works. So I have to expend that money. I would have had to expend that money by June 30th of this past year. How could I possibly have put bids out not knowing what the number's even going to be, right? We would never do that to the voters. We have to be transparent. So we're going forward with this number on our maintenance stuff because we're telling the voters that we have to fix our buildings and fix our roofs, right? That's transparency, right? We're telling them what we need to do and they can vote on it or not vote on it. By taking that $3.4 million and spending $2 million of it on roof when the voters had no idea what we were doing, is that transparent?
Yeah, no,
That's wrong.
No, I on this part, I totally agree with you. I mean, as someone who runs a business and has to do budgeting, doing 18 months out is really hard for anybody, and particularly when you have it's a big organization, you have all these factors. So I agree with that. And the other side of it is, and you know, and I will say is that I can't imagine the school administration doesn't pad that budget, and I know it always is, because the only thing worse than having a $3.4 million surplus at the end of that year is having a $3.4 million deficit. And you guys would be strung up if you did that.
I would not say it's a padding. I would say that there are the people that they probably know they're not going to be able to hire, but they say that they need them.
Right.
And therefore, that's where people think that padding comes from. But I don't think it is.
Right. And I think with those people, they and I'm defending the school here, but they can't just, they have to. Like if it's a special ed person, they can't say, oh, we're just taking that person off the books.
Correct.
Even if they know they can't hire that person.
We are required by law
Right.
to provide those services.
All right, we're going to cut you off, Mike. It's been
All
a
right.
pleasure.
Been a pleasure.
Okay, we'll
talking
do
to
it
you.
after the deliberative.
Well,
And we'll see you tonight.
we maybe do it again before the deliberative.
No, it's tonight.
Tonight's the deliberative. I mean,
Unless you want to come
before,
back this
I
afternoon.
mean, before the vote.
Oh,
so.
yeah, no, absolutely.
All
All right, take care.
Thank you, everybody.